My name is Hannah, and this is the story of how the man I once called my husband left me in labor at the airport just because I was ruining his vacation. But don't worry, the ending? Let's just say, he never saw it coming. It all started on a Wednesday morning in June, the Florida sun already beating down on our driveway by the time Trevor slammed the car door shut. I was standing by the front door, 8.5 months pregnant, swollen feet in flip-flops, holding the suitcase he told me to pack. He didn't even offer to carry it. "Don't forget the passports," he called out. "We're already behind schedule." I waddled to the car as fast as I could, the weight of my belly making every step feel like a small marathon. He sighed impatiently as I climbed in, muttering under his breath about how dramatic pregnant women could be. I bit my tongue. The plan, or rather, his plan, was to fly to Cancun for a relaxing family getaway. Before the baby came. But what he failed to mention until the night before was that the family part didn't include my side. Just his. His parents. The same parents who once called me a bad influence for not cooking enough like his mother. And now, with my due date only a week away, he wanted me to fly internationally with them. I had tried to reason with him. "Trevor, what if something happens? What if I go into labor?" "You're not sick," he scoffed. "You're pregnant. Women used to give birth in fields and keep working. Stop being so soft." I didn't argue anymore. I was tired of arguing. At the airport, he rushed through check-in while I shuffled behind him, one hand on my back and the other holding my stomach. The contractions hadn't started yet, but I could feel something shifting, like my body was whispering, "It's close." Then it happened. Right there at the drop-off lane, as Trevor barked at me to hurry up, I felt a sudden warmth spread down my legs. My breath caught. I looked down. A puddle. My water had broken. "Trevor," I said, panicked, "my water just broke. We need to get to a hospital. Now." He turned, looked at the ground, and his face twisted in disgust. "Are you serious? Right now? In the rental?" I nodded, tears already stinging my eyes. He groaned and grabbed a towel from the trunk, wiping the seat like it was a crime scene. "Unbelievable," he muttered. "You're making a mess. We're not missing this flight because you couldn't hold it together." I stared at him, stunned. Was he serious? He opened the passenger door and gestured out. "Get out." "What?" "You heard me," he snapped. "Call a cab or something. I'm not dealing with this right now." "Trevor, I'm in labor. You've ruined everything," he hissed. "Just go to the hospital by yourself." He grabbed my arm, pulled me out of the seat, set my suitcase next to me, and then drove off. Just like that, I was left standing alone, knees weak, in pain, surrounded by strangers, as my body prepared to bring a child into the world. Before we jump in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My hands were trembling. Not just from the pain or the panic, but from the crushing weight of disbelief. How could the man I married, who once placed his hand on my belly and whispered to our unborn child, leave me like this? The airport noise blurred into the background. People walked past me, some glancing, most ignoring. I tried to steady my breath, but another contraction hit. This one stronger. I clutched my belly and leaned on my suitcase for balance, blinking back tears. Then I heard a voice, calm, steady, warm. "Ma'am, are you okay?" I turned my head and saw a woman approaching, her expression laced with concern. She looked to be in her 40s, professional yet soft-spoken, with sharp eyes that took everything in instantly. My water just broke," I stammered. "My husband, he left." Her eyebrows lifted, stunned. Without asking more, she slipped her phone from her purse. "I'm calling emergency. You're not alone, okay? I'm Nina." I don't know what it was, her voice, her energy, or just the simple fact that she saw me, but I felt myself exhale for the first time in what felt like hours. Within minutes, paramedics arrived. Nina stayed with me, holding my hand as they loaded me into the ambulance. She even climbed in beside me when I asked her not to leave. "You need someone in your corner," she said. At the hospital, everything moved in a blur. Monitors, nurses, questions, pain. But through it all, Nina never left. She stayed by my side, whispered encouragement, and at one point even wiped tears from my cheek when I couldn't hold them back anymore. "You're brave, Hannah," she told me. "He doesn't deserve a woman like you." I don't know when I started crying harder. Maybe it was the pain, Maybe it was her words, but those tears were the beginning of something. A shedding. A breaking free. Later that evening, while I was resting between contractions, my phone, on silent beside the hospital bed, lit up over and over again. I glanced at the screen. Trevor. Over a dozen missed calls. Messages flooding in. I didn't touch it, but Nina noticed. She picked it up and frowned. He's calling nonstop. Want me to block him? I hesitated, then shook my head. Let him waste his energy. A few hours later, my parents arrived, breathless and shaken after flying in from North Carolina. Nina greeted them like old friends. I found out later she'd called them herself while I was being examined. My mom cried when she saw me. My dad gripped my hand so tightly I thought he might never let go. She's strong, Nina told them. But no one should have to be that strong alone. When I was finally wheeled into the delivery, it was Nina who squeezed my hand and whispered, "You're not just having a baby tonight. You're beginning a new life." I gave birth to a healthy baby boy just past midnight. The moment I heard his cry, something inside me healed. Maybe not completely, but enough to know I would never let anyone treat me the way Trevor did again. By the time I woke up from a short rest, the room was calm and quiet. My parents were sitting beside me, smiling through their exhaustion. My son was sleeping in the bassinet near the window, wrapped like a little burrito. I reached for my phone, not for Trevor, but to send a message to my best friend, Lacey. I wanted her to know my son had arrived safely, but the moment I turned it on, my notifications exploded. Dozens, no, hundreds of alerts. Lacey had already messaged me. "Girl, it's everywhere. Call me ASAP." Confused, I called her. "What's going on?" I asked, groggy. "You haven't seen it?" "Seen what?" "The video," she said. My heart skipped. "What video?" "The one of Trevor dumping you at the airport. Someone recorded the whole thing. It's online. It's gone viral, Hannah." I froze. "You're trending," she said. "And not just you, him. His name, his job, his face. People are furious." She sent me the link. I watched the video in silence. From a distance, the clip showed a very pregnant woman being yelled at. A suitcase dropped, a car door slammed, a man driving off. My face was blurred, but it didn't matter. The message was clear. People in the comments were livid. The top comment had over 50,000 likes. "You don't leave a woman in labor at an airport, ever." Another said, "His company better fire him, this is disgusting." My hands were shaking again, but not from fear this time. From something else. A strange, growing sense of power. Over the next few days, the world seemed to shift on its axis. The video kept gaining traction. People were outraged. Some called Trevor the worst husband of the year. Others tagged his company, demanding accountability. Someone even linked his LinkedIn profile. By the third day, Trevor's employer released a short statement online. "We do not condone behavior that contradicts our core values of respect, integrity, and family. We are looking into this matter." By then, Trevor had stopped calling me. But not because he'd given up, no. According to Nina, he was too busy trying to put out fires. Apparently, she had passed the video to a contact at a national morning show. They aired a brief segment titled, "When Going Viral Leads to Real Consequences." Trevor was in it. So was I. Though still anonymous, still blurred. But people knew the story. The damage was done. Nina visited me every afternoon at the hospital. She brought snacks, magazines, even a soft blue blanket for the baby. My parents adored her. My mom once whispered, "She's like a guardian angel who drinks black coffee and wears heels." I asked Nina why she stayed. Why she helped so much. She smiled. "I've seen too many women go through what you did, and not have anyone there when it mattered. I wasn't going to let that happen again." She paused, then added quietly, "Also, you're stronger than you know. Sometimes people like Trevor need to be reminded what happens when they underestimate the wrong woman." A few days later, I was discharged and brought home to my parents' place. They'd set up the guest room for me and the baby, complete with new curtains and a rocking chair by the window. It wasn't big or fancy, but it was warm, safe. That night, as I rocked my son to sleep, my phone lit up again. This time it was a blocked number, then another and another. I ignored them all. But the next morning, my dad picked up the house phone and frowned. "That was your ex-mother-in-law," he said. "She wanted to know when you'd be returning to your duties as a wife." He paused, clearly restraining himself. I told her she should worry more about raising a decent son. Trevor and his parents didn't stop there. They sent emails, voicemails, even tried to show up at the hospital. Too late. I had already flagged their names with security. No one let them near me or the baby. Still, I knew I couldn't live like this forever, checking over my shoulder, waiting for their next move. So I called Nina, and we sat down to talk legal options. She didn't hesitate. I know someone, a brilliant attorney who handles family cases, especially for women escaping toxic marriages. 2 days later, I met with the lawyer, Rachel. Calm, composed, and razor sharp. She listened to my story without interruption, then looked me in the eye and said, "We'll take care of this. He won't get near you or your child again." We filed for divorce. The papers were delivered to Trevor's parents' home. According to the courier, Trevor tried to slam the door in their face, but the documents had already landed on the foyer floor. At first, Trevor refused to respond. Then he called my lawyer, yelling through the phone, saying I was being dramatic and that he was willing to forgive me if I apologized publicly. Rachel, without blinking, replied, "Any further communication must go through me. Goodbye, Mr. Callahan." I smiled when she told me that. For once, someone was standing up for me and not asking me to apologize for it. The next blow came when Rachel requested financial documentation. Trevor tried to claim he didn't have much money left and wasn't responsible for child support because he never agreed to have a baby. Rachel didn't even flinch. "Good," she said. "Then the court will decide for you." That was the beginning of his unraveling. The company, already under public scrutiny, decided to sever ties with him. No job, no severance. His name was unofficially blacklisted in his industry. Soon after, his landlord raised the rent, likely encouraged by neighbors who had seen the video. Trevor had no choice but to move back in with his parents. And let's just say, their neighborhood didn't forget what they saw online. Meanwhile, my life was changing in ways I never expected. Nina invited me to speak on a small podcast she hosted about women's stories. At first, I declined, but then I realized my story wasn't just about pain, it was about reclaiming my voice. So I spoke, and people listened. Emails poured in from women who'd endured similar things. Strangers told me my story, helped them walk away, or finally speak up. I wasn't invisible anymore. With Nina's encouragement, I started journaling again. Short little reflections on motherhood, healing, and strength. Nina's brother Daniel, a soft-spoken graphic designer, offered to help me turn them into a small book. We worked together on it for weeks, and somewhere along the line, the late-night design calls turned into quiet laughter. Then long conversations. Then coffee. And one evening, after we finalized the last draft of the book, Daniel looked at me and said, "I know you've been through hell, but if there's ever a time when you want to try again, with someone who shows up, really shows up, I'll be here." He didn't push. He just meant it. I don't know what the future holds, but for now, my baby sleeps peacefully beside me, the sun shines through my window, and I am free. Not broken, not bitter, just whole. Finally. 3 years later, the woman in the mirror didn't look like the one who once stood crying on the sidewalk of an airport, alone and terrified. This woman stood tall. Her eyes were steady, her smile real. Not perfect, not untouched by pain, but powerful because of it. My son Eli had just turned 3. He loved dinosaurs, peanut butter sandwiches, and bedtime stories with too many sound effects. His laughter had become the background music of my life, his little arms the anchor that kept me from ever drifting too far into sadness. We were okay. No more than okay. We were whole. The book Daniel helped me publish, a short collection of reflections on single motherhood, healing, and reclaiming identity, had quietly found its way into thousands of hands. I still received messages from women who said it gave them the courage to leave, to speak, to heal. Daniel and I never rushed anything. He showed up, again and again. He was patient, kind, steady, the kind of man who brought coffee without asking, who built a birdhouse with Eli on a quiet Sunday afternoon, who never made me feel like I was too much or not enough. One crisp autumn evening, while Eli chased leaves in the backyard, Daniel slipped a small note into my hand. It wasn't flashy or poetic, just 5 words, handwritten in blue ink. "Can we build this forever?" I didn't cry, not like before. I smiled, a full, quiet smile that stretched all the way into my chest. We weren't a story of fairy tales and perfect timing. We were something better. We were real. And somewhere in a small box at the back of my closet was a folded-up newspaper clipping with a blurred photo of a pregnant woman at an airport, and a headline that once haunted me. I kept it not out of bitterness, but to remember how far I'd come. That moment didn't break me. It built the foundation of the life I have now. So if you're listening, if you're hurting, if you feel like you're standing alone in the middle of your own storm, just know. The life waiting on the other side is so much bigger than the pain you're in now. And it's worth everything to get there. The first time I truly realized I was doing it all on my own, Eli had a fever of 103 in the middle of the night. I remember standing in the kitchen in my oversized sweatshirt, holding a cold compress in one hand and the pediatric thermometer in the other. My heart pounded faster than it did during childbirth. I wasn't sure if it was fear or exhaustion or both, but the silence of the house that night was louder than any scream Trevor had ever thrown at me. Eli whimpered from the living room couch where I'd made a little nest of blankets. I had already called the pediatric nurse line. They said to monitor him. Hydrate, watch for signs of labored breathing, the usual. But nothing felt usual when you were alone at 2 a.m., responsible for a tiny life. I walked back and forth, trying to remember if I'd given him the last dose of medicine at midnight or one. I opened the medicine drawer and stared, blank, as if the answer would leap out at me. Then I heard the knock. Soft. 2 taps, then silence. I opened the door, still clutching the compress. Daniel stood there, holding a small paper bag. His hair was messy, his shirt inside out, and he looked like he'd just run a marathon. I saw your light on, he said gently, and I couldn't sleep. He didn't wait for permission. He never did in a way that felt intrusive. He walked in, sat beside Eli, and placed the bag on the table. I brought a different brand of electrolyte mix, and some cooling pads. I used to get high fevers as a kid. These always helped. I didn't say a word. I just sat beside him, the weight of the night slowly lifting as he helped me press the pads to Eli's forehead. Daniel stayed until the fever dropped. He brewed tea, told me stories, and at some point we both dozed off sitting up, Eli snoring softly between us. The next morning, I made waffles. It was the most peace I had felt in months. Later that day, while Eli napped, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. Without thinking, I began to write. Words poured out of me like a river that had been dammed too long. I titled it, I Am Not Broken. It wasn't a declaration. It was a whisper. A reminder to myself. That night didn't make me weak. It didn't mean I had failed because I needed help. It meant I was human and still healing. I posted the piece on my old blog, the one I hadn't touched since Eli was born. By the next morning, it had over 80,000 views. Emails flooded in. Messages from single mothers, exhausted fathers, even strangers who said they saw themselves in my story. Some thanked me. Others cried. One woman wrote, "You helped me walk away." I couldn't believe it. The post got picked up by a women's wellness platform. Then I was invited to speak at a local event for women who had survived emotionally abusive relationships. I didn't think I was strong enough, but Daniel looked at me across the kitchen table and said, "You've already done the hard part. You lived it. Speaking it is just breathing now." So I went. The event was small, maybe 30 women in folding chairs in the community center gym. But when I stood up at the front of that room, hands trembling, I looked at them and saw myself. In their eyes, their posture, their silence. I told them the truth, that healing is not linear, that some nights you'll still cry when you see a child hug their dad in the grocery store, that sometimes forgiveness is not a gift you give someone else, it's a weight you take off your own chest. And that joy, when it returns, feels like learning to breathe again after forgetting how. After the speech, a woman approached me. "I knew Trevor," she said. "We worked together. I always wondered, we all saw how he talked about you, but no one said anything. I'm sorry." There was a time I would have lashed out, demanded why she didn't speak up, why she watched me drown and chose silence. But that day, I only nodded and said, "You don't have to carry that. I've already put it down." She cried, and I hugged her. Afterward, I found Eli asleep in Daniel's lap in the hallway. Daniel smiled at me like nothing I said inside had surprised him. Later that night, as I tucked Eli into bed, he looked up and asked, "Mommy, can I be strong like you when I grow up?" I kissed his forehead and whispered, "You already are." And in that quiet, In the stillness of my small, imperfect house, I felt something settle in my chest. It wasn't grief. It was home. It was a cool September morning when Daniel surprised us with the idea. We had just finished breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, and way too many blueberries on Eli's plate because he was making a mountain. Daniel wiped the boy's sticky fingers, then turned to me with that quiet glint in his eyes that always came before something meaningful. "I found a place," he said casually. "Just a small cabin by the lake. No phone signal, no emails, just trees and still water." I raised an eyebrow. "A retreat from the world?" "A retreat with the world," he said, glancing at Eli, who had started humming loudly, clearly on a sugar high. "I was thinking we could go, just the three of us." I hesitated, not because I didn't want to, but because I did, and that was still scary sometimes. We packed light. Eli brought 3 stuffed animals and 1 book, which he insisted on reading to us. I packed sunscreen, bug spray, and every shade of doubt I hadn't let go of yet. The cabin was perfect. No Wi-Fi, just the rustling of trees, the occasional hoot of an owl, and the calm stretch of water beyond the back porch. Daniel built a fire the first night. Eli danced around it with a flashlight, pretending to be a forest explorer, while I sat on a blanket and watched them. Later, when Eli finally fell asleep beside me in the loft room, I crept downstairs to find Daniel outside, staring at the lake. He didn't turn when I sat beside him. "He asked me today," he said softly. "Who did?" "Eli. He asked if I was his dad." My breath caught. "I didn't know what to say," he continued, "so I told him I'm someone who loves him very much, and I always will." I looked down at my hands. "He wasn't asking for biology," I said. "He was asking for belonging." Daniel turned to me then, really turned. His eyes were steady, but there was something deeper behind them. Vulnerability, maybe. Or just truth. "I love him, Hannah. Like he's mine. And I love you too. But I don't need an answer tonight, or a ceremony, or anything that comes with pressure." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small wooden bracelet, simple, unpolished, but smooth from being sanded by hand. He held it out to me. "I made this for him. It has our initials, just a small circle, nothing official, just a reminder that he's not alone, that none of us are." I stared at it, at the letters burned into the wood. EHD. He didn't ask me to say yes, he didn't kneel. He didn't present a diamond or speak vows. He just gave us space, a quiet offering, a love that wasn't loud, but enduring. That night, I placed the bracelet inside the memory box I'd kept since Eli was born. Inside it were hospital bracelets, ultrasound photos, and 1 crumpled piece of paper, a printout of that article about the airport. I didn't keep it for bitterness. I kept it to remember what I had come through. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling beams of the cabin, listening to Daniel's slow breathing and Eli's quiet snores. And I thought, not about survival for once. I thought about legacy, about the kind of life we were building. And in that silence, I finally admitted something I hadn't said out loud in years. I was happy. Not perfect, not untouched, but deeply, beautifully happy. And that, after everything, was the most radical thing of all. Hannah's story isn't just about survival. It's about reclaiming your worth after someone tried to take it from you. She didn't find strength overnight. She chose it. Every single day. So let us ask you, what part of her journey hit you the hardest? Do you think she made the right choices? Drop a 2 in the comments if you felt inspired by her story, or drop a 7 if you're still wiping your tears like we are. And if you want more stories like this, stories of courage, love, and justice, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, because the next chapter might be yours.